So the spectrum of community engagement is really a tool for us to identify opportunities to deepen community engagement by moving towards a power sharing model of power sharing practices. And so as you can see on here, the spectrum starts with ignore the community, close doors, or don't get input or consider their needs, all the way to the right hand end of the spectrum, where we really are empowering community and defer to them to drive solutions and implementations of policy change, system change, or programs. And so when we talk about power sharing in this model, we mean the intentional effort to distribute decision-making power to the community, right? So intentionally making sure that community has power to make decisions over issues that impact them. This means that we need to recognize community members that recognize that they have valuable knowledge and expertise about their own experience. And it also means considering, not only do we think we are engaging them, but do they feel engaged, and how do they want to be engaged are things that to consider as well as we think about this spectrum. So we'll go through each of these individually, and Adrian so graciously has dropped the link in the chat to the full resource where you can see all the details. But today we'll just be giving a brief overview. So when we think about community engagement and equity, the key to creating more equitable outcomes, health outcomes, and others is to share power with communities who are directly impacted by the issues or policies or systems that we're trying to change, right? So by the end, if we get towards the end of the spectrum, that's the area that we're living in. And so briefly, again, I mentioned ignore means that community members are denied access to the table, right? They don't have access to make decision-making or to make decisions about the progress. The meetings are closed door and also can lead to marginalization of the community, and typically happens when there are very systematic processes in place that reduce access to the decision-making into the process. The next step is to inform. So we're moving from ignore into inform. And this is where we might see activities such as providing relevant information to the community. This could be through fact sheets or bulletin boards, right? But this is just where the institution or the admin is providing the information. We're not at the stage yet where we are gathering input from the community. I see something happen with my slides here. Sorry about that. Okay. So the next phase is consult, right? So this is where we gather input from the community. These activities may seem very familiar to you all because this is where surveys happen, focus groups. A lot of the activities associated with community needs assessment happens in this phase. Right, and then we move on to a higher level of involvement where we are ensured that the needs and assets are weaved throughout the process, and that community needs actually inform the planning of the process. And so here we see that community has more voice. There may be other activities like community forums or organizing where community are able to vocally say what their needs are and how they want things to be changed. Then for the next level, we have collaborate. And so here we see some delegation to the community. The community plays a leadership role and aids in the co-design and co-implementation of the solution. Right, so here we may see contracts or MOUs with community-based organizations or other areas where they are beginning to take ownership over the work. And then the last stage, and where we see true equity begin to happen and transformation, is that we defer to, right? So the community has ownership, they have structures for governance and decision-making and voting. And they're really driving the work, the solutions, and the projects in the community. So at this point, when we defer to the admin or institution, really it takes a back seat while the community makes all the decisions. And here is where we see sustainability in programs, we see improved outcomes, those things that we like to see as a result of programming. So I'm going to stop here really quickly to see what questions or comments you may have. And please feel free to raise your hand or unmute or put it in the chat. So now that we kind of talked about the what and a little bit about the why, the how we move along the spectrum requires us to lean into those principles that you all named earlier, right? So that's how we're kind of circling back to that. So when we have that ongoing engagement, that's, when we invest in co-creation and building the trust, a lot of these things that you already said, listening and having that bi-directional communication, really inviting community members to the table so that they have a stake in the decision-making, having and creating space for diverse thought and multiple types of knowledge in the space are going to help move us along that continuum. Making sure that the community has the resources and the finances to be able to move forward solutions that they drive and that they create is also important. And then, of course, when we invite the community members and those who are most impacted by issues or by systemic issues, we are more likely to get programming and solutions that are culturally centered and inclusive.